Hello, this is Patras, and today I invite you to witness the mighty clash of two forces of Hordes in a small desert oasis represented by this beautiful gaming table. What you are about to see is a 35-point game between the forces of the Circle Orboros led by Morvahna the Autumn Light and the mighty legions of the Skorne Empire led by tyrant Xerxis himself. It's a nice hot day here in Berlin. Cold drinks and snacks are at hand, the scenario is throwdown and the game is about to begin in a few moments. Meanwhile, we will take a close look at the adversaries. On the Skorne side, Xerxis is leading his forces from a recessed position in the center of the field. On his left flank, there is a massive block of cataphract warriors consisting of no less than 6 Catrati as well as an equally sized unit of Arquari. Being the elite infantry of the Skorne Empire and provided with an extra tyrant commander and a standard bearer, those lads must not be underestimated. Finally, held at bay by a measly 4 Paingiver beast handlers, a Titan gladiator and a Titan sentry form the right flank of Xerxes' forces. If that is not an avalanche of iron and flesh, I don't know what is. On the other side of the battlefield, Morvahna has spread her warriors in a wide line, ready to orchestrate the charge from a central position in the forest. To her left, crackling, gnashing and greenishly glowing stands a mighty world warrior. He shares his flank with the female nobility of hunting and bloodshed. Up front, a group of 6 Tharn bloodtrackers, each equipped with a set of spears that has the tyrant commander's name written on it. And closely behind, eager to worship the great devourer in their very own and special ways, gathered a raging circle of Tharn blood weavers. Speaking of rage, Morvahna brought good old Gorax to her right, along with a stomping, snorting incarnation of mischief, the Gnarlhorn Satyr. On the calming side of things, she puts her faith in her apprentice, the Druid Wilder, as well as in a unit of shifting stones, carefully guided by the most patient of shepherds there possibly is. Furthermore, there is an Argus watching over the right flank, accompanied by a lonely werewolf striding through the upper forest. Morvahna wins the initiative and is about to start the game by sending her left flank aggressively forward. Which is what the Tharn ladies do, sprinting ahead, claiming the Holy Grove first round and putting themselves in a great spot for outflanking Xerxes on his right. Remember, the pumpkin field would provide concealment for the checkers, but since there will be no considerable shooting from the Skorne and those girls are stealthy enough anyway, it just doesn't matter. The other flank is taken in a far less convincing manner by just the werewolf. It is out of question that he will not be able to achieve anything at all against those cataphracts. By forcing her beasts to run and gather in a loose line with a Wilder, Morvahna is falling back a bit into a more defensive position herself. She casts Restoration onto the shifting stones, brings up Harvest and burns some excess fury, leaving her with only 1 at the end of her activation. The shifting stones then teleport in a strange formation around the barricade. That looks to me as if the Stonekeeper hasn't arrived on the battlefield completely yet. His wits seem to enjoy themselves elsewhere, and he better cease to them arriving, for the Skorne certainly will soon enough, and punish him for poor placement like that. There is a lot of commanding and shouting going on in the Skorne camp as Xerxes is making his move. He is giving the protection of Defender's Ward to the Catrati while pressing them forward. Then casts Fury on the Arquari and advances. The Tyrant Commander plays his part and makes the Arquari keep pace with their brethren, following them on their way. Thus encouraged, the Cataphract infantry advances in a close formation, protected by the heavy shields of the Catrati. They are clearly heading for the ancient sacrificial altar, and there is nothing that could prevent them from claiming it at this point in the game. But what will Xerxes do about the Tharn flanking forces? From the looks of this, Xerxes does not yet want to split his host, so he keeps them close together and forces the Titans to run along the infantry, maybe overdoing it a bit on the sentry as the armored beast steps up to the enemy and bellows out his defiance for the tree huggers. But there the beast handlers catch up with him and put him back in line. Now, it's time to look at the circle and see if this demonstration of saber rattling did break morale over there. The Blood Witches slow down a bit and take a defensive position in the forest, with one of the girls up front hiding in one of those big hollow stumps. I think this is more of a routine than a sign of fear in the face of a raging elephant. In fact, most of us have seen them deal with these kinds of threats before, don't we? Not to mention the World Warden that strides at the edge of the Holy Grove and starts to glow even more, using his geomancy powers to try and throw an eruption of life at the Titan sentry. But the Titan is not harmed, as the destructive energy evaporates just a few inches in front of him. In the meantime, the Gnarlhorn walks up to the barricade, looking for a nice and juicy counterslam, which is supported by the Argus, who trots near him and gives his animus to the satyr, encouraging him to look even harder. Morvahna, who upkeeps both Restoration and Harvest, joins the party and finally gives regrowth to the Blood Witches. With his tail pinched between his legs, the war puppy, runs back to the forest where he originally came from, looking for some backup, which presents itself in form of the Stonekeeper, who ranked up his fosterlings in what seems to me a slightly better position, as well as the Gorax, who runs over to the right flank. And running is what the Bloodtrackers do on the far end of the battlefield, and those ladies are fast. They are almost in the backyard of the entire Skorne army. Xerxis needs to do something about that very soon. Xerxis keeps it calm. He's a professional and certainly has faced a lot of worse situations in his career than this obvious outflanking maneuver. He upkeeps Fury and Defender's Sword and continues to yell his battle plan at the Cataphracts, once more urging them to move faster. Immediately, the Catrati respond and claim the hill, forming a tight wall with their shields, allowing the Arquari, who have been pressed forward by the Tyrant Commander, a safe passage to the same location. The Skorne then anchor their right flank with the Titan Gladiator, who runs in front of Xerxis, followed by the Beast Handlers and the Sentry, who cautiously shifts into the remaining gap and uses his animus. Morvahna upkeeps Harvest, Regrowth and Restoration, and still does not want to charge into the Skorne wall. The Bloodtrackers are in plain sight of their prey now and sprint towards it, leaving the Tyrant Commander with no option but fleeing if he wants to avoid getting pierced by multiple javelins in the very near future. From the forest appear the Bloodweavers and put some pressure on the Titan sentry, but mainly pose a threat to anyone who will be foolish enough to approach the sacred trees next to them. Meanwhile, the World Warden moves in between the forest and the oncoming Skorne, goes for another eruption of life that falls short again and grows some brushwood out of frustration. Can a construct get frustrated? Who knows? Anyway, the Gnarlhorn follows him half the way, then uses his own animus, maybe just because he can, and waits for one of the Titans to determine who the real king of slamming is. The Argus moves into the forest and gets slightly mad because Morvahna seems to have prohibited any kind of territory marking involving holy plants. Speaking of the Grand Dame of the Circle, she steps up behind him, casts his animus on the Gnarlhorn and burns some fury. Her apprentice, meanwhile, is anxious to stay in range of both the Gorax and the Satyr, should the latter need a strength boost to deal with any Titans that might come his way. The Gorax and the Stones fall back slightly and get ready to teleport the beast into enemy lines should it be necessary, while the Keeper tries to soften the very same lineup by bringing a Stonehammer down on it, which to his big disappointment misses and does no damage to the heavy armored Cataphracts. In the meantime, we could see the cowardly fleeing wolf running towards his mistress through the small pond that turned out to be shallow enough for him to pass. Xerxis upkeeps Fury, but drops Defender's Ward, and immediately casts it on the sentry after giving rush to it as well. He looks at his battle plan and decides to overcome himself, and thus possessing Pathfinder skills, he backs up behind the barricade. To his left, the advance of the Cataphract block slows down as they tentatively move forward. The Tyrant Commander betakes himself to flight and runs to reunite with the heavy infantry and the Gladiator, who covers their right flank by walking up and facing the Circle's heavies. The Beast Handlers fan out as some of them run back to Xerxis and keep an eye on the Bloodtrackers, who at this very moment get embattled by the Titan sentry. The beast uses its animus and kills one of them with its tusks, but fails to reach another one with his halberd by a fraction of an inch. That certainly did not went as planned. Morvahna upkeeps all her spells and finally sees the time fit to push forward a little harder. Thus, at her command, the World Warden approaches the gladiator and shoots another eruption of life at the nearest Catrati, which this time hits, but even though he puts a lot of force into it, it hardly injures the Skorne. At the same time, the Stonekeeper decides to establish a roadblock and fails to bring down a Stonehammer on the Catrati again. Behind the enemy lines, things are going a bit better for the Bloodcheckers, who move forward, eager to throw some javelins into Xerxis, and at the same time avoid the sentry's halberd. They manage to hit both of them with 2 spears each, and all but one of their archaic weapons bounce off the Skorne armor, but the last one penetrates Xerxis' breastplate as well as his torso with its razor-sharp edges. He stumbles, but is far from falling, and the impertinent little girls better search themselves a nice big tree to hug when he turns his attention towards them. But reinforcements are on their way in form of the Bloodweaver Coven, who rushes forward into the gap between the sentry and the gladiator, and while the Gnarlhorn gets ready to slam anything back that gets near the World Warden, Morvahna casts his animus on the Argus to get him out of the woods. The Argus then runs a good distance to cover the Satyr, whereas the Gorax is summoned closer to the Wilder, who hastens to the World Warden and calms it down a bit. Meanwhile, the Warwolf is running to the Holy Grove, which he shall be entrusted to guard as the main forces start to get rough in the center of the field. Now Xerxis has to react, and does so by upkeeping Defender's Warden Fury and sending the sentry in a second time to finish off the Bloodcheckers. But the Titan is not made to deal with the agile tribeswomen, and only manages to smash his shield into one of them. Seeing this, the Pengiver beast handlers come to his aid, kill another one, and calm him down a bit. The gladiator then rushes into combat with one of the Bloodweavers, facing the same problems as the sentry, but finally killing her with a well-placed punch. Now the Arquari get involved, and 3 of them throw their harpoons at the Argus, hitting and pulling him in range of their close combat weapons. The struggling beast manages to dodge their blows, but can't escape the oncoming Catrati, who, encouraged by the tyrant commander, split their big shield wall into multiple small ones, and inflict another grievous wound upon the 2-headed dog. They kill one of the Bloodweavers, who on top of that get attacked by Xerxis after he pressed forward. He kills one of them, and then he decides that the Arquari would be in need of Defender's Ward more than the sentry, and thus cast it on them. Morvahna sees her chance now and decides to commit to an assassination attempt on Xerxis. She upkeeps Harvest and Regrowth, brings back 3 Bloodweavers, then walks up and pops her feet. Influence on one of the Catrati misses Horriboy. Still pumped up with untamed energy, the reanimated witches charge the gladiator and 2 of the beast handlers. Ganging up on the Titan, 3 of the raging witches almost slice him in half, while the beast handler next to Xerxis explodes in a fountain of blood and erupting plants. But neither of the 2 terrible spells harms the warlock or the gladiator. Empowered by the Wilder who casts his animus for him, the Gnarlhorn Satyr does what he has waited for all day long and slams the staggering gladiator right into Xerxis' face. The brutal force of the attack kills a nearby Blood Witch, knocks Xerxis down, carries the Gnarlhorn right up to the maltreated warlock and leaves the gladiator lying on the ground behind the barricade, an inch away from death. The Satyr immediately starts and tries to stomp Xerxis into the ground, but the tyrant transfers his first wound to the gladiator, dooming him to a certain death and leeching his accumulated fury. The remaining wounds then get transferred to the sentry, who is in no good condition thereafter, but holds his ground against the Bloodcheckers who kill another beast handler, thus creating a small forest. Noticing the danger the Gnarlhorn is in, Morvahna sends the World Warden to crush as many of the Catrati as possible, completely underestimating them and putting the World Warden in mortal danger as well, or following a sinister plan that involves the death of all her heavies. With the Autumn Blade you never know. Swinging his rune fists at the well-protected cataphracts, the World only manages to turn one of them into a forest, which on top of that fails to hurt any of the bystanders. The limping Argus moves in the way of as many cataphracts as possible, snaps at one and awaits certain death. Teleporting next to the World Warden, the shifting stones get ready to heal the construct as soon as needed, while the Keeper has another unsuccessful Stonehammer scattering off into the open. The Gorax closes in behind the stones, looking for an opportunity to join the fight, while the Werewolf enjoys himself in the forest that is now his to guard. Tyrant Xerxis, who upkeeps both spells, is by no means amused and calls for retaliation. He cuts himself for extra fury, stands up, pops his feet and starts the punishment by combo striking the Gnarlhorn very hard and finishing him off with 2 successive attacks. The Beast Handers jump forward and kill a Blood Witch, the Aquari charge in, kill another one, and the Argos, and inflict major damage to the World Warden, who gets finished by the Tyrant Commander, who left his position on the hill in the process. The screen around Xerxis is completed by the Ketrati, who close ranks and kill 2 Bloodweavers and 2 Shifting Stones, while the Sentry kills 2 Bloodtrackers, leaving both units with only 1 individual. The Barbarians, however, are not broken, stay where they are. Morvahna sees her force significantly weakened, but knows that she could easily end the battle by sending the remaining Bloodtracker to the sacrificial altar on the hill that the Tyrant Commander foolishly left unguarded. This in mind, she decides that Xerxis should be punished for what he dared to do to this place. She upkeeps only regrowth and brings back 2 Bloodweavers, then walks forward and forces her way into the mind of one of the Ketrati, constraining him to stab his comrade in the back right in front of his tyrant. The Stonekeeper hits Xerxis with a Stonehammer but does not manage to harm him. Simultaneously, the Wilder casts the Gorax Animus on the beast and sends it after the last Ketrati that is in between Xerxis and the sacral blades of the Bloodweavers. The mad beast charges in and easily tears the Skorne warrior apart, thus opening a corridor through which the Tharn women can reach Xerxis, who has no fury left. Shrouded in silence, 2 of the witches throw themselves onto the tyrant, delivering to him the coup de grace.